Hi there, and thank you for clicking on this video. Going to be talking about the new end user license agreement. The last video that I did, where it was just, you know, gameplay, two people talking about the EULA as they saw it, shooting the shit basically for a couple of hours and Steel Path Mod. This one's going to address the end user license agreement more directly. All opinions are my own. Um, And before we get started, because this channel is monetized, portions of this content provided here, including trademarks and copyrights and any other intellectual property rights, are owned and held by Digital Extremes. You can read it yourself. There is a lot to unpack in terms of what is in the new end user license agreement. We're going to compare it to the new one and the old one. One of the things that seems to be getting passed around is that, oh, it's a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo. And as long as, like, somebody is just, like, a common person, like, reading over the forums, everybody seems to think it's not that big of a deal. And I've read over the current end user license agreement. I also have the old one pulled up. You can view it on the Wayback Machine, the web archive. There are some drastic differences. And I will provide links to other end user license agreements that sort of exist in the same space. Minecraft, after going through and reading probably 20, 25 of them, Minecraft has the most down to earth and like easily readable and understandable for that, like no legalese whatsoever, except for where it's like referencing a law and user license agreement. So for those of you already that are like, oh well, the end user license agreement is just something you sort of like skim through and click OK, go ahead and read that one if you want to put in a little bit of homework before you listen to the rest of this, to see what a really good one looks like. Okay, I'll provide a link in the description. I'm going to have a bunch of links, as well as Riot Games and user license agreement, in case people are, say you clicked on this video and you're thinking like, oh, well, it's Tencent. No, it's not. Because Riot Games is owned by Tencent, and it's not the same tone. There is a big difference between Digital Extremes and Riot in terms of what their end user license agreements are. But mostly what this video is going to be covering is more commercial applications, because there is no specified difference between like a small YouTuber, which I would qualify under because my channel is monetized. It would readily count for commercial purposes. And say if you stream on Twitch, which a lot of people are doing, obviously not as a percentage, but just in terms of like the number of people, a couple hundred people stream on Twitch in the Warframe section. We have streamers on YouTube as well, though not as popular. But a lot of people upload to YouTube, and though they're not trying to make serious money, they're not going to not monetize their channel when they hit 1,000 subs. So you would count for commercial use. You're trying to make money off of it. There's no distinguishing factor really between, say, like a company making YouTube videos that involve Warframe or an individual that's monetized. The end user license agreement, skim through the old one, just in terms of like straight up what's the difference. Well, a lot going into it because it's straight up like 3 times the size. Now, obviously, a lot of it has to do with the additions at the end, talking about like Nintendo, PlayStation, and all of that. The schedules down at the bottom is a lot of stuff that got added on. Um, like region specific issues. Um, but mostly what we're going to be covering is going to be the player code of conduct, which a lot of it is new, and the streaming. So most of the rest of it, to be honest, is completely fair. It's fair. There's nothing really to be angry over or upset about, but the two biggest issues is going to be the player conduct in my eyes, and like the commercial points, right? Because it's, I'll explain it more, but the commercial application when talking about like streamers like on Twitch and YouTube, which are the two entities that it specifically names, but obviously it would be talking about like streaming on Twitch, streaming on YouTube, but obviously this would directly expand to say something like Kick, right? So that sort of stuff really isn't addressed in the end user license agreement too much, but it's really addressed in the new one. Okay, so let's go over to the player code of conduct. We are going to have to jump back and forth. They used a lettering system. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the system you would be, or the section that you would be comparing it to would be licensing restrictions and limitations. Player code of conduct is sort of an amalgamation and an addition to this section with some additions. Okay, so we're just going to go down and talk about more or less each point. And I'll like say cheating or data mining. Listen, the data mining one, people were like, oh, well, you can't data mine. And it was sort of a surprise to some people that they can monitor your RAM. That was in the other one. It was straight up listed that they monitor your RAM. But I'll talk about that. So a lot of these where people are like, oh, I can't believe they can do X, Y, or Z. It was in the old EULA, and it's kind of standard practice, making room for like anti-cheat and like basic monitoring services that are pretty standard practice. Now, whether you want to talk about whether those are like morally or ethically done, that's a different conversation. But in terms of like a quote unquote power grab or them expanding the EULA or what they could do, there's just really nothing to talk about because you agreed to it before. Okay. Player conduct. Well, we strive to make all of our players and users feel safe, welcome when using our services and player games, and we want everyone to play by the same rules. So if you use our services unintended without cheating, being abusive, disruptive, or disrespectful, and being unfair, you are probably in the clear, but please read all the terms of the EULA carefully and to be sure. All right, we are not going to be reading everything line for line, but there's already, in my eyes, some soft language that's already kind of troublesome because it doesn't really go into in enough detail. Some of these words are very, very broad in terms of what would need to be. Like, the EULA is designed to be as broad as it needs to be to protect the company, but at the same time, like, disruptive is something that they don't really define down to the point. Like, down here at N, says it engages in every player, where it's like, oh, bullying, threatening, promotes violence, terrorism actions. But disruptive could mean so many more things. Like, disruptive isn't like, actually, we're connected to the internet. Let's see what the definition is. Literally just causing or tending to cause disruption. All right, what's the definition of that? Disturbance or problems which interrupt an event, activity, or process. Obviously not trying to chase down like a hyperbole or like a red herring or anything, but like interrupting an event, activity, or process could be as loosely defined as somebody being new to the game, doing a mobile defense, and just forgetting that they picked up the key. because you're not in the other person's mind, like, you just don't know. Like, obviously you can see the person carrying the key, but if the person's new or something like that, it would take the other three people, to use discretion to understand that person is not being disruptive. And that's where the line seems to be drawn in a lot of these, is that you will be in this space of potentially breaking the EULA, but it takes somebody else to discern that you're not breaking it. Because the EULA doesn't actually define what this stuff counts as. So let's start moving down. We'll go by each point. You agree not to do any of the following with respect to the services as determined by us, where applicable. We'll come back to the as determined by us, because that seems to be what I was talking about, where it takes somebody else to discern that you weren't. Because the rules don't say specific enough what actually does count. So, okay, use them commercially. You won't use them commercially for a promotional purpose or for the benefit of any third party or in any manner not permitted by us. There is going to be an issue with third-party applications. A lot of you know this by now. So say like a Leica frame. I forget what the other one is. Any sort of like a Wireshark can count as like a third-party application because it just interacts with the program at all. The problem is that like when you get into something like a Wireshark, Windows does this shit on its own. Wireshark is just collecting the data more or less. Now it does do some additional stuff because of the program, but like who you're connecting with IP-wise, Windows has logs of this shit anyway. But anyway, moving on. Won't use or provide any unauthorized third-party programs to intercept, emulate, redirect any communication between the services and us, or that collect information about the game. This part, as far as I can tell, and again, this is not my advice is not like legal advice, but Windows in and of itself does this. Like, you literally cannot play this game. This is impossible. Collect information about the game. The log system on Windows itself collects information about the game. Like, not to be hyperbolic, but like, what system am I supposed to be playing this on? And third-party programs, like I said, a Leica frame, like intercept, emulate, or redirect any communication. There's going to be an issue with VPNs further down the list. This is a legal program that has legitimate uses that somebody has to do something with, and it is up to somebody else, DE in this case, to discern that you're not being vindictive about it. And that seems to be, keep going through, and I'm just speaking off the cuff on this. Anyway, I'm going to continue. You're going to find that tendency where it's like the EULA is broad enough that it can apply to too many things, and it's up to somebody else to discern that you're not being vindictive. Provide ancillary offerings not offered with the services by us, function of the App Store, leveling services. Now, everybody knows what they mean by this. This is like somebody taking, like in World of Warcraft, like somebody taking over your account and power leveling. Or what is it, like the level boost or something like that, if I said that right. Hosting services was pretty straightforward. I wonder how this is intended with, say, like PvP, because you can host a private PvP match, like literally through the fucking launcher. So it doesn't discern this stuff. And even when you do like PvP matches, a lot of times you'll see when you do Conclave, you'll see server hosted by so-and-so, and it doesn't appear to be a DE server. but there's no point where it says like, oh, you can host private PvP servers using our program. It doesn't make the exception for it. So mirroring our servers, matchmaking, emulation, communication redirects, mods, hacks, cheats or bots, or any other automation control. In this EULA, they did not. Obviously, it was mentioned in the forums, but they have since updated the EULA. I would have loved to have seen them put in, like some sort of acknowledgement about like auto clickers, or like really define what counts as like a tool for disabilities. Like for me, occasionally, if I'm doing a long run and I'm doing like a melee carry, like I still have to use an auto clicker occasionally, even if it's just to like crack my knuckles or something and just stretch my hands a little bit. Like I really don't use them to not play the game, but like if I'm playing for a while, like my hands start to get sore. So I'll load up the auto clicker, use it for like 2 or 3 seconds to give my hands a bit of a rest and just incorporate it, but I'll turn the auto clicker back off and then be in full control of the game. But I'm never not playing the game because of an auto clicker. Trainers, automation programs that interact with the services in any way, tunneling, third-party program add-ons, and interference with online or network play. All right, interference with online or network play is pretty straightforward. The only time I've ever really seen an issue was when I was playing with somebody that had internet issues, and it had something to do with their router, where their internet was dropping like super intermittent. Like it was, the packet loss was so severe. My firewall or my Windows Defender thought somebody was trying to do something where it was just massively trying to ping me, and it locked their connection. And I actually got the alert on Windows Defender saying somebody's trying to connect with your computer repeatedly, because their connection was constantly dropping up and down. That being said, I guess you can't disconnect somebody that's trying to be abusive. Like I get where they're coming from. Everybody gets where they're coming from. But like built into the program, into Warframe, is a matchmaking ping limiter. Not that it works that well, but you can select this. But if you have a program that won't let you connect, I guess that's not allowed anymore. Or gives you an additional warning. Sometimes it's like people can be abusive with really long ping connections, especially in like PvP. So something like that I can understand. But the fact is like what it was saying about like recording like your network information. Windows does this to start with. You can't not do it. You would literally have to go into your computer and disable it. The logs always log what you're connected to. So anyway, point D, access or use them on more than one device at a time. I understand that, but the game has something built in where if you use the companion app, it logs you off the game. I kind of wish this would have specified using a single account, though that is a pretty easy assumption. It never really made sense why I couldn't be on the companion app and on my computer at the same time. I mean, maybe that's probably a networking issue, but if it's like a cell phone, I mean, I guess maybe on a cell phone, now that we have Warframe Mobile, maybe this will be more of an issue, and maybe this is just them getting ahead of it. But if you're on the cell phone and you're on your computer, never understood why you couldn't be on Warframe on both. I mean, just send the text message or whatever it is to both, right? It would allow you to be in the game the entire time. Like if you were doing a longer mission, and I guess maybe you could like be at the Foundry at the same time. And maybe they don't want that, but seeing how that's basically a non-issue, I don't really know how this would affect anything, but they're probably assuming like maybe like 5 to 10 different locations. But the game has this thing built in where it logs you out anyway. So some sort of explanation. They're never going to address this. But again, with an updated EULA, there's so much discretion on stuff like this, and like nuance of what it could potentially mean. I would have loved them seeing actually like gives examples, because they do it later where they give you an example where it's like, oh, blah blah blah. Like in the streaming section, they're like, oh, you can do XYZ if people have to be able to view the footage for free. Like they list out some stuff. Okay, point E, copy, reproduce, distribute, display, mirror, frame, or use them or any of our other materials, IP, or proprietary information in a way that is not expressly authorized in the EULA. Alright, just saying, like, that's pretty straightforward. Sell, rent, lease, distribute, or otherwise transfer the services, game, or any content, including without limitation, virtual goods or game currency, including participating in or operating so-called secondary markets for virtual goods. This is obviously toward like paid services, like actually gray market. Maybe this is leaning toward Warframe getting its own market. I did see a forum post about the Chinese getting their own in-game market. But this doesn't specifically say you can use Warframe Market. And that was one of the things that I thought about with this is like, Warframe Market could easily count as a secondary market, but you don't actually trade goods on the market. So, I don't know. Attempt to reverse engineer, except as otherwise permitted by applicable law. Derive source code from, modify, adapt, translate, data mine, decompile, or disassemble, or make derivative works based on the services of any content. This is basically the same as over here. Nothing really to say about that. Don't hack their shit. Don't data mine. I mean, obviously people are gonna fucking do it. There's no way to stop this, but they just don't want you to do it. This is straightforward. Next one, remove, disable, circumvent, or modify any technological measure we implement to protect them or any of their associated IP. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward also. Like, you can't disable any security system they have. So I guess that this would be more combined with the one above, because like a lot of the files that are on your computer from Warframe are encrypted. So like just don't be decrypting them and stuff like that. Next one is create, develop, distribute, or use any unauthorized software programs to gain an advantage in any online or other game modes, or otherwise cheat. And they define it further down. This was pretty basic. You know, gaining an advantage where, I don't know. This is mostly a PvE game. I could see this being directly applicable to PvP. But maybe this is just my ignorance in terms of like where you could gain an advantage, except in say like a macro. Like I know they're used in like the Eidolon communities and like PT communities with like speedrunners, like people that are actually trying to set like records. But what actual advantage could you get other than being able to farm longer? Like, you can't force the game to spawn in like an unnatural number of enemies. Like, you're still capped by the amount of enemies, and you're either killing them fast enough, or you kind of get overrun. So maybe this is more of my ignorance. There's nothing wrong with this. Attempt to probe, scan, or test its vulnerability or breach any security or authentication measures. I understand why they put this in here. There's no fucking way to stop that. I mean, obviously, put it in to protect yourself. I get it. But you can't fucking stop that. Uh, don't hack, access non-public areas. Basic. Uh, skip that one. All right. M is the first one where we start getting into like actual player behavior, and it's a little vague. Uh, a lot of it has to do with like the fact that this is an international game. Um, but we're starting to get into like super subjective stuff. So let's go. We're gonna read this one. It has subsections. Upload, publish, submit, or transmit any user content. Create a username or account name, or otherwise engage in any behavior that one infringes, misappropriates, or violates a third party's patent, copyright, trademark, trade secret, contractual rights, moral rights, or intellectual property rights, or rights of publicity or privacy, or any other rights a third party. Okay, so most of these are pretty common sense, so I'll just skip them. Moral rights, I kind of want to know what that is. Like, what are somebody's moral rights? Like, this is such an unknown term. Like, when you think of what a moral right is, you can sort of figure out what it counts to you. But that's literally your own opinion. What counts as a moral right? Because generally, when you have a right, say, like I'm in the US, right? Like, you have the right of free speech. Most rights are balanced. You get an adult toy, but the responsibility of that right is it requires more work out of you than what might be a baseline. So say like freedom of speech is viewed as a right in the US. The responsibility of that right to make that right possible is you have to be competent enough to filter out bad information. You have to be knowledgeable on what counts as a good argument. You have to be knowledgeable enough to be able to read the source of facts and information to then judge whatever somebody could say. What the fuck is a moral right? You have a moral right to what? It doesn't get described. But what would be the responsibility to make that moral right? Like, this is one of the things where it's like, maybe this is a reference to like Canadian law, but a moral right is not well defined where I'm at in terms of like a legal entity. Now, obviously, like something like intellectual property rights, like everybody knows that that's like the patent system, right? Or like things that, like what you create, like a trade secret is like processes that are done like in house. Contractual rights is like literally enforcing a contract, what somebody's entitled to per a contract. Patents, these are nouns. Copyright is a noun. Trademark is a noun. Trade secret is a process. Contractual rights is literally a piece of paper. You have to sign a contract to then get those rights. And it's an agreement, and you've probably traded something for them. The fuck is a moral right? Like, what moral rights are there? Like, literally, let's Google it. Additional rights held by authors of literary, dramatic, musical, or artistic work. They consist of rights that protect the integrity of a work and the reputation of the author. Okay, so what is that? Is that specifically for the music? Harvard University, what's a moral right? Yeah, this is American stuff. I need... So what have we got? 97, 92? I don't think this is a super active field of law. Moral right to control your work. Okay, so it's a... The concept of moral rights thus relies on the connection between the author and his creation. Moral rights protect the personal and reputational Okay, so it's personal and reputational rights. Or moral rights protect the personal and reputational. Okay. Value of a work to its creator. Okay, so this still needs to be defined. But that's the US version. We would need to know exactly what they define this as. But anyway, it's basically like their self-interest, how they value it. They need to express this. Like, this needs to be fleshed out. Like, give us an example, bro. And other intellectual rights of private publicity or privacy or any other rights of third parties. Okay, subsection 2. Violates or encourages any conduct that would violate any applicable law or regulation or would give rise to civil liability. Okay, this is incredibly straightforward. The problem is there's a lot of fucking laws. And it's first thing, any applicable law. Listen, I live in the U.S. and the U.S. doesn't know how many fucking laws it has. We have this thing called the TSA. And when you travel in and out of the country, you can't break any law in the world. Okay? So if you're traveling and, like, say you want to bring a lobster back from someplace, if you bring back a lobster from the wrong country, they will either confiscate it or arrest you. There are times where it's like, oh, if you go and somebody gives you like in Micronesia, for example, like say one of the islands, there are specific islands where on the island you will have fish that are like readily available. Like literally you can just take a spear out or like a net and pull them out of the ocean. But they count as protected over there and nobody's going to tell you. You'd be like, man, I really like this fish. I want to take it back home. Well, you're breaking the law in some cases, but like you're just out on a beach somewhere. This is incredibly broad, even though it is very specific. The issue is any applicable law. There's no defined jurisdiction. What laws are they talking about? Like when I see this, I know this is incredibly hard to enforce or is massively over restrictive. Obviously they're narrowing it down in terms of like user content and rights of the company, but like further down, like they're going to mention harmful activities or substances. Okay, let's just all be adults about this. In some parts of the world and in some states in the US, weed's fucking legal, people. Like completely legal. So when this says violates any applicable law, does that mean somebody making a weed reference or is talking about like promoting, not necessarily like trying to sell something, but they're talking about how great something is between two people and say they're talking about weed, does that mean they're breaking the law because in another part of the country or in another country altogether, it's really illegal? Like, is this a lowest common denominator, any applicable law? Like, if it's legal where they are, but illegal somewhere else, do you have to find what the lowest common denominator is? Because in some countries, if you have weed, you're basically sentenced to death. Obviously, that's selling, but like, if you have enough weed, it's basically a death penalty. Are we going by that? Do we need to start executing people? So this is where this gets dangerous. Is like, what is the direction on this? Obviously, this is completely overblown. We're just talking about like stealing content, but there are going to be places further down where this context doesn't get clarified. It's still applied like this. Or regulation that would give rise to civil liability. Okay. Subsection 3 is fraudulent, false, misleading, or deceptive. Like fraudulent, false, or misleading, or deceptive. Like they don't really mark out like misleading or deceptive. Obviously, everybody understands um what the spirit of this is talking about. But it's talking about like user content. So like conversations, like does this include DMs? If people are, joking around with each other and they have a very coarse sense of humor, like where's the line at? Or they're joking around and they're fucking with each other. If both people understand that, or say they're in like a Discord call, but they're actually typing to each other, the conversation in text might not make sense if somebody is reviewing the DMs or in region or in like alliance chat, because there's no specification on this. I just want this entire section just needs to be better defined. Subsection 4 is grossly harmful, racially or ethnically objectionable, disparaging, blasphemous, libelous, defamatory, obscene, pornographic, pedophilic, vulgar, or offensive. Most of this is pretty standard. Let's be honest. Disparaging, gonna have to Google that one. Expressing the opinion that something is of little worth. Okay. Derogatory, more or less. You know what? I'm actually surprised, because I've read through this. They specifically say you can't do pornographic, right? Notice this doesn't say nudity. There is nowhere in this form where artistic nudity is not allowed. But you go over to say like Minecraft, EULA, and it says nudity. So this gets knocked out also. So they chose the broader term. I mean, maybe that's like a DE thing. Now, obviously, pedophilic, vulgar, or offensive. Offensive is another one that is super broad. I actually kind of want to see. Oh, we've added definitions. Causing someone to feel deeply hurt, upset, or angry. Actively aggressive or attacking. Like, this is more like sports, like performing an action. You can't really do anything about having a normal conversation. Like, over the period of like the time that I've played Warframe, I might have hurt somebody's feelings like twice. Just in natural parlance. Somebody, if they were having a bad day, if somebody feels angry about something, you can't do a lot about that. The way to fix it is to have a conversation between two adults. But you can't fix this. How in the hell are you? If somebody is having a bad day and they blow up on you, you didn't make that person angry. Like, that's why, like, the middle finger was invented for traffic, right? Like, you're driving along, you're driving in a straight line, and somebody drives past and flicks you off. Like, you didn't piss that person off. Like, you didn't do anything to intentionally piss that person off. You might have been driving a little bit too slow for their taste. This sort of language is way too broad. Now, everybody understands, like, the spirit of what they're going for, of being, like, intentionally offensive, where it's intentional. But the way this word and this language is being used now, you can be offensive just by expressing your own opinion. You can be having a conversation about the thing that you just expressed your opinion about, and somebody could call you a bigot or offensive. Does that mean you get banned? This section is a little dangerous in today's society. The worst I could possibly say for this is maybe this section just needs to be reworded for today's landscape. And that's about all I'm going to say on it. I just thought it was funny that they put pornographic and it doesn't say nudity is not allowed anywhere. That's kind of fucking wild. Anyway, Section 5 promotes discrimination, bigotry, racism, hatred, harassment, or harm against an individual or group. Pretty straightforward. Nothing to really complain about there. That's justified for being there. Subsection 6 is violent bullying, threatens or promotes violence, money laundering or gambling, terrorism, or actions that are threatening or disrespectful to any person or entity. Again, perfectly fine until we get to this last section. It doesn't specify enough what this could possibly be. Because if somebody's being a shithead, and like I'm talking to them, and they're a shithead, you can't then say you're being disrespectful to them, because then you both get banned. You get to protect yourself. Like this seems to be like the only way I can think about this entire setup working is the victim has to take the beating and then call mom at the end of it. But you never expect the person to actually stand up and establish the social boundaries themselves. Because like if somebody is like verbally attacking you, block them, right? Report them, block them. But if the person is pissed off and you know that, somebody, if it's in like an alliance chat or clan chat, you might have the context for what's going on. And they're talking to you, but a third person, because it's clan or alliance chat, could then be viewing what's going on. And though the two people involved are obviously being adults with each other, a third person could be, oh, this person's being disrespectful, and report one or both parties, and there would be no context. Even though everybody should be adults. Especially since, like, you need your mom or one of your guardians or whatever they say to accept the EULA for you if you're under 17. This is a little broad in practice. I mean, obviously, everybody understands don't be disrespectful. But you can't force people to play nice, because you lose at the end. If you force everybody to be nice, then it means in order to play Warframe, you can't relax, and you constantly have to have sort of a filter on how you interact. And don't you want people to just be completely natural and relaxed and playing Warframe? Like, this is part of the reason, like, this is not the main reason, but this is part of the reason why people play solo, is because they just get tired of having to deal with other people. The way you get around that is you need people to be able to talk and communicate with each other in an unfiltered state, and once everything gets filtered out, people just tend to fucking chill. Subsection 7, harms minors in any way. Yeah, pretty straightforward. I'd be surprised if it wasn't there. Subsection 8, promotes illegal or harmful activities or substances. Man, everybody gets what the spirit of this is. I think this needs to be reworded just for the landscape of what society is nowadays. There are so many things that are legal in one country or in one state, being in the U.S., or I guess maybe in Canada, the provinces don't have this issue, but in the U.S. we have states where, like, say, marijuana is completely legal, and then you have states like where I'm at, medicinal marijuana is legal. They even have like stores for it. But if you were to try to sell weed to like a friend, it would still be illegal, though it really wouldn't be enforced. But if I went and talked about how great weed was, not that I do it, because listen, at my job we get drug tested too much. I have nothing against it. I'm just saying, like, I can't. But if I were to talk about how great weed is, or beer, and that would be another thing. Say somebody's 19 and drinking in Canada. Drinking age is 18 there, right? Well, the drinking age in the US is 21. Is that illegal? If the Canadian kids are talking about how great alcohol is to a 19-year-old in the US, that's illegal. Promoting harmful activities is how it would count in the US. So for something that's 7 words, this is really hard. This is really, really hard to to pin down to the point that this is almost useless. It's literally just covering your ass, this sort of statement. Anyway, going on to N. This one is probably the last of the really, like, it doesn't mean anything sections. Engage in behavior that violates, encourages any conduct that would violate any applicable law or regulation or give rise to civil liability. It's an international game. There's almost no way for this to be accurate because of how different laws are. So it's either lowest common denominator or DE literally needs to pull out and post exactly what they think the laws are, so everybody knows. And like interpretation, say like on the alcohol, right? Like the drinking age is not the same everywhere. So it's just, in terms of issues, like it depends on how automated their system is. Like the general consensus has been, and I tend to agree, is relay chat, region chat, Q&A, and recruiting chat tend to be the chats that are the most heavily moderated, where obviously they're not going to like go over your DMs, but it doesn't mean they don't have them, right? They could, if given an issue or if somebody makes a complaint, could then go back through your DMs if they keep them that long. But in terms of actively moderating like clan, alliance, and DMs, I'm assuming they don't. Especially compared to like region and like the more public ones, right? But it definitely doesn't mean they don't have those chat records. They might be saving them. I don't think they've ever said like how, if they do save them, how long they do. Okay. The next one, subsection 2. Here's another one, really broad term. Is fraudulent, false, misleading, or deceptive, including trolling. Man, maybe the definition of trolling has changed for my demographic. Like, I would be on the younger portion of a millennial. I'm closer to dead even, but like the slightly younger portion of it. Trolling for my generation was somebody trying to have a good time at its heart. It wasn't actually trying to hurt anybody. If this has changed, somebody like correct me, to where trolling turned into something like, is trolling like actually trying to hurt people nowadays? Because if it has, even like how I've heard it being used, like it doesn't sound like people are actually trying to cause actual damage. It was always supposed to be like, you get somebody like a little bit emotional just to fuck with them, but you're not actually trying to cause damage, right? Like maybe this has changed, but that's what I thought it was. So fraudulent, false, misleading, or deceptive. Man, this is, obviously we understand what the context is, but information changes. Not saying it's relevant, but like, say vaccine information. What counts as misleading? Like, this literally, in order for this to work, DE would have to put out like a list of what they consider facts. Like, there was a big conversation in the US going on with like vaccines, and it didn't blow up until one side literally basically told the other side to shut the fuck up. Right? Like, if the conversation had been able to go on and just occur naturally and people could work it out and come to a conclusion, there wouldn't have been any issue. But it wasn't until one side labeled the other as misleading. Now, the ultimate irony of it, is the side that got labeled misleading and deceptive sort of got their recompense at the end, where a lot of like the really more like ludicrous stuff, what was it, the like the Chinese lab ended up being something way more legitimate than anybody cared to. But the fact is the labeling of misleading and deceptive by one side against the other was used as what would count as an act of violence. It was used as a tool of oppression. So this sort of stuff, like saying something false, bro, how would you know? Like how would the other person know that if you said something false, how would they be able to determine whether it's something you thought was right, whether you knew was wrong and said it anyway? Because you have what? Some like a false statement is it's something that was true in the past but is no longer true. And you're just not up to date. Okay, so that's category 1. You have the information is false, but you say it as a true statement, so lying. You didn't say the statement correctly, but you were trying to say the same thing, or you forgot something a little bit. So you have good intentions, you're trying to say the right thing, but you get the context or the wording wrong, or slightly misremember the definition, but now the new statement that comes out is false. How do both parties fix that when it's just like, oh, you're banned? Or you can be banned? Because, like, what would normally happen is somebody would say something, and somebody would go, that sounds right, but I don't think that's true anymore. And then they go figure it out. Like, you're not trying to be like an asshole. And then, obviously, you're going to have, like, those assholes, the nuance bros. Well, technically, that's not correct. Okay, nobody likes talking to you, right? And then you have the people where it's like, oh, my mama said this. And then it's just an issue of like, oh, hey, that was true like 50 years ago. Your mom was saying something that was true then. We've since put more research into this, and you just update the person. It's not a big deal, right? So, like, saying false is really kind of fucking relative. Now, obviously, if the person knows what the true statement is, deliberately comes up with a false one, and is actively trying to convince somebody of something, that's a different context. But it doesn't mention it here. It doesn't say intentionally trying to spread bad information, or is trying to spread information that they know is wrong. That's not what this says. Like, we all understand what the context here, but that's not what the wording is. It just says you can't engage in any information or any behavior that's false. Okay. Subsection 3, moving on, is defamatory, obscene, pornographic, vulgar, or offensive. Again, I'm kind of laughing at the pornographic thing. They never say nudity. So, like, artistic nudity is allowed. It just can't be porn. You think I'm lying? NUD doesn't appear anywhere in this EULA. Pretty basic. Pornographic, vulgar, offensive. Obviously an M-rated game. You wouldn't want people going around making comments like gemussy or talking about depression with like suicide innuendo and like red text or anything like that. We wouldn't want that. It's not a bunch of adults. Subsection 4 promotes discrimination, bigotry, racism, hatred, harassment. This is all pretty straightforward. You can tell what it is. These terms have intent behind them, or harm against any individual or group. I get the spirit of this, but what counts as harm is getting broad fast. I would have loved to have seen a better definition behind this. Just because of the nature of how our language is moving, I'm not going to get into like which side is doing what, because both of them are doing things, obviously, in their own spaces. But what counts as harm is not a stable definition socially right now. I would have liked for a, now obviously this is like personal taste, I would have liked for there to have been a better definition here. Something more stable, more descriptive, because what counts as harm is moving. Subsection 5 is disruptive to the game, app, its users, or the community. Another term, disruptive. Look at the definition. Causes disruption. What counts as a disruption? Disturbance or problems which interrupt an event, activity, or process. Yeah, same thing as before. This is weak language. They could have said intent here, and they didn't. So it's the same thing as before, further up with disruptive. What counts as disruptive in which circles? Like if you're in a speedrunning community and you're trying to do a 6x3 plus 2 Eidolon, your bar for disruptive, when that is your goal, you say, I want to do a 6x3 plus 2. I'm recruiting for a 6x3 plus 2. You go to your clan, your alliance, you pull from a Discord, but you get somebody that you know you've done plenty of 6x3s with them, but you find out in mission that this person can't do a 6x3 plus 2. They can do a 6x3 every day of the week, but they can't do a plus 2. Does that count as disruptive? You know what I'm saying? Like, the bar for this can be incredibly wild. So, obviously, would have loved to have seen some more language here. Obviously, this is a personal choice on their part. But disruptive, I need a definition from them on this to actually know what this is. It's disruptive to the game, app, its users or user community, is violent, bully, threatening, or promotes violence, terrorism, or actions that are threatening or disrespectful to any person or entity. Same thing as before. It was up here. Disrespectful is kind of a broad term. Get your synonyms out. Get your thesaurus. I would have wanted a better term in here, because disrespectful, it is one of the terms that's being abused right now. The definition of what counts as disrespectful is almost meaningless in terms of how it's being used socially. Just sort of like the lay of the land of what the social circles look like. This disrespectful is pretty widely abused right now. So I would have liked for this to have been stayed away from. Promotes illegal or harmful activity or substance. Okay, same thing as up here in terms of the uploads, but this is the behavior section. What, you can get banned for like joking about like how great weed is if you're in a legal state? So the other one is interfering or attempting to interfere with the access of any user, host, or network, including without limitation, sending a virus, overloading, flooding, spamming, or mail bombing. This is straightforward. Don't fuck with the network. Collect or store any information that could be used to identify an individual, either itself or combined with other information from the services from other users of the services without their express permission. Yeah, there's kind of no way to follow this. Your computer automatically records information. Like, you're going to get IP addresses. Like, there's literally nothing you can do about it. Any computer that you've ever played with in Warframe, because it's a peer-to-peer game, is going to have your IP address. Warframe, as of right now, maybe they'll change it in the future, has no masking. You know exactly where the other person is. Or you know exactly what their IP is, and you can narrow down their location to absurdly close. As of right now. Subsection Q, behave in a manner which is detrimental to the enjoyment of the services by other users as intended by us and our sole judgment, including without limitation harassment, use of abusive or offensive language, game abandonment, that's going to be one we're coming back to, game sabotage, spamming, behaving in a disruptive manner, social engineering, okay, or scamming, or contrary to public morals or public policy. This is a dangerous section because this is so whatever the lowest common denominator is, it's gross. This is a dangerous section. Behave in a manner which is detrimental to the enjoyment of the services by other users as intended by us. Okay, going back to that 6x3 plus 2. Does that count as bannable? Obviously, they wouldn't in that scenario. But there's nothing preventing them. Where in most other EULAs, they specifically say you have to break terms. Like your account will be terminated if you violate the end user license agreement. The default is the account's kind of yours. That doesn't exist in this EULA. Where the default is, hey, this as long as you maintain, you don't break the EULA, like the account's kind of yours. In Warframe, it just, the tone coming off of it does appear to be, hey, if you have the tone seems to be, listen, it's ours, it's 100% ours. As long as you play nice, like, we'll let you keep it. Because behave in a manner which is detrimental to the enjoyment of the services by other users as intended by us, in our sole judgment, this is an unfair way to use this statement. Okay? Because if you're running... Okay, if you're trying to pop relics, and you go to Lith, right? Lowest level, but you don't want to do Steel Path because you're trying to pop relics as fast as possible. I'm LR3. If I get in there with like an MR2, and I'm running like a Thermal Sunder Gauss or Titania or something where it just blows the map up, am I behaving in a manner which is detrimental to the other person's enjoyment? There was a video done by Nightmare Frame about what the meta is. And this is, as far as I can tell, the exact opposite of what he was trying to get across. About like how there's a meta, how if you try to do things that are against the meta, you know, you're doing something weaker, everybody's trying to get in a mission, complete it as fast as possible. And you're like, oh, I want to use my really niche bow build. And I want to see how much damage I do against this Nux. Well, everybody else is running shit that can blow up the map to try to get it done as fast as possible and as safely as possible. Who's being detrimental to who? This doesn't explain anything because this entire thing gets ignored. And it just matters about this and our sole judgment. Now, obviously, they're going to list a bunch of other stuff here. And what the fuck is game abandonment? Okay, something about chess. When a new game starts, you have a certain amount of time to make your first move, or the game is considered to be abandoned. Okay, not helpful. I would assume this means going into a mission and leaving before it's done. Now, obviously, common sense would dictate that this would be more of a repeat issue. But the only time this really matters is if you're host. Warframe, you're strong enough to complete any fucking mission by yourself. With any time like I want to do a mission with somebody else is to just make the mission easier. It's never an issue of I can't do the mission. We don't have those mission types anymore where you need to be in two spots at the same time. Like, what, like a friendship door? they don't spawn in solo. So there's nothing in the game where it would, and there's nothing in the game that would be detrimental if people left. It's annoying with host migrations, but if they were going to migrate anyway, you can't stop them from leaving as at a round reward. The only thing this could possibly be talking about is somebody like aborting a mission without getting to the round reward. What does it matter if 90% of the game aborts are at the very beginning when somebody's like, "Oh, I picked the wrong relic," and they'll just bail? What do you need them for? I don't know. This seems like it's starting to get like a little bit broad. As soon as you get far enough in Warframe, you don't care if there's somebody else playing with you. It just makes the mission go faster. But if you're playing in pubs, you can't tell the difference between a disconnect and somebody leaving on purpose. And there's so many host migrations because of connection issues, you can't fucking tell the difference. This just, obviously they're covering their ass on this, but like, this is another one of those broad terms where you obviously understand what it means, but if you're an observer, you can't tell what's actually going on. Like, if you're in a mission and somebody else abandons the game, you can't tell if they had connection issues or if they force aborted the mission. You can't. Like, maybe if somebody had like a bad connection, as long as they're not host, you don't see any ping spikes. So there's no way for you to tell whether somebody aborted the mission on purpose or disconnected. I don't even know why this phrase had to be in here. You literally can't tell unless the host has a bad connection. So, game sabotage, that's pretty self-explanatory. Spamming, that's pretty self-explanatory. Behave in a disruptive manner. Man, obviously we understand what this means, but if somebody's having a bad day, you could potentially pull the trigger on this a little bit too quick. Like, being disruptive. If somebody's new and they get into a public game and a more experienced player, now obviously this is a skill that all older players need to work on, but if somebody is new and generally doesn't understand what's going on, okay, they might get into a game with a bunch of more experienced players, and the more experienced players will start telling the newer player, hey, this is how you got to break it down. It's part of the community. Well, if somebody doesn't want to be talked to, are the more experienced players being disruptive and ruining their experience? The default in Warframe is the older players, if they're willing to engage, will gladly educate newer players. Okay. But if now, because that could potentially be counted as like a disruptive manner, does that mean the younger player gets to pull the trigger on the older player? Like, there's context here that they could have added. So, like, in a disruptive manner, that's super broad. Social engineering, listen, I'm going to skip this one. If you think social engineering on a game that's free to play, if you're the type of person where you're so worried about social engineering on somebody either like getting money out of you or doing something that you don't know how to do, listen, you want to see how you start, like, say I'm getting social engineered on the old EULA. Okay, like this, oh man, this end user license agreement, oh man, it's social engineering me, it's trying to manipulate me. Listen, this is the internet. Here's how you stop this. You see this little X up here? Oh man, it's gone. That's how you stop social engineering on the internet. Okay? Like, just, oh, this is like, they're messing with me. As soon as you realize somebody played a game on you, and it's like, oh man, they caught me slipping a little bit, just block them. Okay, that's how you fix that. That's how you fix that. Damn, okay, I learned my lesson. They got me. I didn't know. It was the first time. Shit, man. Just block them. Learn your lesson. That's how you fix that. Sorry, I had to cough. Scamming's pretty straightforward. Don't do it. Um, public morals or public policy? I'm gonna try to keep this brief. Who's fucking public morals and public policy? Which country? Listen, you gotta list this shit out if you expect this stuff to be followed. Which fucking country are you talking about public morals and public policy? Which society? Just come out and say liberals in Canada. Just say it. And I need you all to come up with laws that'll make you happy and what your public policies are. Okay? I need you to say it because it'll be the first time anybody's fucking said that. Just tell me what your public morals are and your public policy is. Because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. We don't have the same public morals and public policy as Canada. We don't have, where I live in my state, we don't have the same public morals and public policy as a different state in the US. So there's no way the US is going to have the same public policy as Canada. If you want this to be followed, and I am down to be educated on whatever your laws are that you feel are relevant, so I can make a conscious decision on whether I want to deal with it or not. But you gotta let me know what they are. Okay? Public morals, I need you to let me know exactly what your public morals are. No broad strokes. I need examples. I need it broken down. Because let me tell you, my morals are not the fucking same as yours. I am not you. You gotta fucking list this shit out. Okay? Moving on. I don't want to get too much into that. I could bitch about that for a while. Don't impersonate. Here's another one. This is going to be one that pisses people off. It kind of pissed me off. Use IP proxying or other methods to disguise the place of your residence, whether to circumvent geographical restrictions on the services or for any other purpose. Okay. Let me tell you, using a VPN and an IP masker, there are completely and utterly legitimate uses. If you are worried about people getting around your government is bad, so we're going to punish the citizens mentality, and you're mad about people just using VPNs and just literally ignoring it, you need to say that. If we find anybody that's using an IP masker to get around this is fine. But using a VPN has incredibly legitimate uses. It has incredibly legitimate uses. Sometimes when you're using the internet, you can find that your connection might be like really unstable. So obviously it's not an issue, but the reason why I used to be somebody that used a VPN was when the internet was new. Is I would, if I was going through the internet and I was just browsing web pages and I didn't really care about ping, I would ping across several different paths for my information to take, like old YouTube, for example. And all I wanted was the most stable connection. I wasn't worried about like if I say a connection had like a 15 ping, but was dropping 90% of the packets, and I had the option to go to like a 50 or a 60 ping, but it was perfectly fucking stable, and all I'm doing is watching videos, I would move over to the 50-60 route. I guess I can't do that with Warframe. So maybe just leave in circumvent geographical restrictions, but this feels like if you have, the only way you could possibly enforce this that I can see is if you're using a VPN, you can't even have it running, because when they talk about the cheating or the cheat detection stuff, they scan your RAM, and if you're using a VPN and it's on and you're using it, even if it's not active, just by having it running can cause issues apparently now. So I don't know. I mean, obviously that's kind of bullshit not being able to use a VPN. I get the circumvent geographical restrictions, but I don't know why you would need the VPN aspect of that. Like, if you're trying to circumvent geographical restrictions with like a VPN, why can't they just tell that, like, oh, you've been in Russia for 9 years? All of a sudden, Russia goes to war, and all of a sudden, your IP hasn't moved from like Mexico. It's like, oh man, all of these Russian citizens that played Warframe are all of a sudden based out of the same fucking server in Toronto. Damn, they must be in the same apartment building. It seems like this would stick out a little bit. Obviously, you can change your IP. But generally, when using a VPN, wouldn't you know the VPN servers eventually? Like, I thought the VPN servers were all pretty well known. But, I mean, obviously, you could probably do like a. I don't even know how it would work on video games, but couldn't you still do like a Tor Onion or some shit like that? I mean, that stuff has like built-in VPNs, and there are some browsers. Like, I've thought about going over to the Brave browser, and that has a built-in VPN on it for privacy services to like prevent tracking of ads and cookies. So anyway, use another person's game account to boost. Pretty straightforward. Don't let somebody else play on your account. Use the services in any way that would affect us adversely or reflect negatively on us or the service, or discourage any person from using all or any portion of the features of the services. This sort of leans toward bugs. But basically, this is just like, don't use the service that would negatively affect us. So, like, you don't DDoS them. Like, this is pretty straightforward. Encourage, promote, or take apart and or enable anyone else to do any of the foregoing or violate any applicable law or regulation. Listen, this is incredibly straightforward, but the fact is it's whose fucking laws? Alright, most of that stuff's the rest of the stuff's pretty straight. Beta testing, you don't own anything. They can cancel at any times. Refunds, don't charge back, don't be an asshole. Licensing, virtual goods and game currency, it's all monopoly money. Dispute resolution. The one thing they don't mention that I thought was kind of interesting, and anybody who's ever done like a class action, the overall, again, not a lawyer, but the reason why companies make everybody sign an arbitration agreement is because an individual will get more money if they sue, right? But in a class action, each individual will get less money compared to suing individually, but you'll get 20, 30 times the number of people, or the law firm can mass report or mass send out a bunch of emails. They'll be like, oh, we're doing like a class action, you want to join in? And everybody will just go to the email, click yes after filling their information out. So you'll get a multiple more number of people joining a class action. So what they don't want is the big payday. So they're taking the chance of dealing with each person individually and just assuming so many less people are going to try to do that, because each one has to get a lawyer, each one has to go through arbitration. But when the payday hits for each of those people, it's going to be way more, as opposed to a class action where you might get some law firm trying to drum up business, picking up 4 or 5 million, where each person doing it individually, you might only have to do with like 20 to 30, right? That's the general gist of it. That's why they don't want you going through class actions. Again, this being a EULA, most of this depends on what country you're in and how heavy your consumer protections are. Depending on where you live, you might not even be able to fucking waive this right. So it depends on where you are. Look at your local laws. So, and that's part of the thing is it's like what country? Like they can put whatever the hell they want in here, and they have. Um, let's see, what's the other one? Streaming. Hold on. Uh-oh. It had Twitch. Okay, streaming policy. Goes over with videos as well. Let's see where the other, yeah, YouTube and, okay, so streaming policy, this is a little relevant to anybody who might have gotten an hour and 20 minutes into this video. We hope that you enjoy our games and support interest in producing gameplay videos, whether live or recorded, that share your gaming experience with others using images, videos, sound effects, in-game music, or other assets from our games, content. Please note, however, that in most cases, using our content without our permission is illegal and in violation of our rights. Man, setting up that ecosystem. This policy helps inform you of the limited rights we grant you to share your experience with our content and with the public in your videos. Use, and see, here's the thing, and this is what I wanted to talk about. This gets a little wild when you think about it. Your use of our content videos must be limited to non-commercial purposes. So because my YouTube channel is monetized, I already fall out of this. Except as expressly stated under this streaming policy. We do, however, permit you to receive payment. Oh, hold on, I skipped. Under the streaming policy. Okay, you may only use our content in your videos for non-commercial uses, except as we expressly state under the streaming policy. As such, you may not license your video which leverages our content to any company or anyone else for a fee or other form of compensation or for any other commercial use without first receiving our written authorization to do so. Note that we reserve the right to use our own videos for commercial purposes, of course. Further, any of your videos that leverage our content must contain commentary, gameplay, or sufficient originality to make it in our sole discretion. For educational, and these are our examples, all of this must be in compliance so that you can make an educational or promotional video or stream. Examples are videos that would not qualify under this policy are clips of cutscenes from games, of course, or recordings of a particular game's soundtrack, of course, without any commentary. Yeah, fair use, right? They can't say don't use it at all, right? Just don't upload like the entire cutscene, right? Even though, is it still the case that all of Warframe's top videos are literally music and cutscenes and like promo trailers? Like, has anybody like actually cracked the top 100 yet? We do, however, permit you to receive payment based on the following two methods. Provide you comply with other portion of the streaming policy. Monetization of your video that leverages our content through advertisements served by the platform which hosts your videos, such as YouTube or Twitch, a platform. So it's got to be educational and promotional. And this is where it gets kind of confusing, because it wasn't until I checked other end user license agreements that I realized that it is specifically noted in other end user license agreements that people can do gameplay like this, where it's like, furthermore, any videos that leverage our content must contain commentary, gameplay, or sufficient originality. And it stops here, right? More or less, it stops here. Like, it just has to be original content. It needs to be you and the boys doing a level cap, or it can be like you messing around in a dojo, like the Warframe equivalent, right? And then it stops here. This extra portion down here, except for maybe soul discretion, this extra portion down here doesn't exist. Like, Warframe content has to be educational and promotional. That nuance doesn't exist on other platforms. Like, they at least acknowledge that people get to make, like, you know, like in like PvP, they get to make like a trick shot montage, or like a fashion frame video, or like a dojo showcase or something like that. Like other places acknowledge that, and when they don't list what counts as promotional, but like when you look at the definition, related to publicizing of a product, organization, or venture so as to increase the sales or public awareness. They really gotta be leaning on public awareness if they're going by this word. So I'm not really sure exactly what they mean by this, because I know, unless it's like a build video or like an interaction video, a lot of stuff that isn't build videos isn't exactly educational per se. It might be talking about like a dev stream or something like that. So it's got to be promotional, and it's got to be just under the fact of raising awareness, just by the stuff existing, that being able to make videos on YouTube would be accepted. So it's pretty wild, where a lot of the other end user license agreements will specifically mention out that like regularly seen YouTube comment or content is viewed. Like it's shown where it's like, oh, like, you know, PvP montages and whatnot. Like they'll list that shit out. But DE just says educational or promotional. So I'd love to see some context on that. There hasn't been any given as of July 13th. Distributing, gotta be free. I actually, not that I'm really too happy with this user license agreement, they actually kind of fucking missed something here. This doesn't acknowledge things like Patreon, and like, say the wording in Minecraft, EULA. Let me try to find that shit. No. Okay, let me show you the difference. Videos and streams. I had to Google it. If you qualify with the following essentials and the brand and asset usage guidelines, naming guidelines, you may create, use, and distribute videos and streams of you playing and using Minecraft for any lawful reason, and you may make money from them by adding or permitting advertising in them, as long as, very simple bullet points, all video downloads are free to view. There is no paywall or any other charge to view the videos. All streams are made free to view within 24 hours. You add your own unique content to the video or stream, such as audio commentary or footage of you making cool stuff. This is their EULA. It says making cool stuff. Obviously, it's Minecraft. Would love to see something like that for our dojos. Oh, you've made cool dojo stuff. You don't create or use videos or streams whose purpose is to advertise or promote other products or services. They list that out elsewhere, where it's like literally, you're not using Minecraft as sort of like a skin to advertise for a product. Like it would have to be like a cutout, like, you know what I'm saying, like where it's like, oh, now a word from our sponsors, like that's part of the end user license agreement. Like you have to do that, and it can't be um like Minecraft Steve running around with like, you know, whatever widget they're trying to tell, like say, like you have to cut away, do the ad, and then you can come back to Minecraft. Don't sell physical copies or videos of your streams, DVDs, etc. You don't broadcast or distribute videos or streams via television. To help you understand this, yeah, this is significantly easier to understand. So I think if for whatever reason any DE employee actually gets this far, they need to take a good look at this section, because they actually miss some stuff. They need, because the thing that doesn't get mentioned is private VODs on YouTube. Website review with any kind. It doesn't say anything about you have to be able to view stuff for free. But what do you do when stuff gets transferred over? Because what I've seen, here was the scenario, right? You can make something free, but it doesn't show like a finality to it. So what I was seeing is there was a streamer, and I'm not going to call him out on it, but they would stream. Obviously, you don't have to, it's not like sub mode or anything like that, where it's like sub to like private streams. But they would have the VOD up, and then they would download the VOD and put it onto a YouTube channel that was private, and only like Patreons or patrons, whatever the people that like support people on Patreon, whatever that person is, would get the download or get the link for the private VODs. And even now on Twitch, you have content creators, not like official Warframe content creators, but you have people that stream on Twitch that have private VODs on Twitch where you have to be a sub. I would have actually loved to seen this sort of fleshed out. But anyway, so take a look at the Minecraft if anybody from DE actually sees this shit. How you may distribute your video, pretty basic. Subject to the terms of applicable EULA and the streaming policy, you may create videos using our content, and you're free to distribute such videos on websites where viewers are permitted to view these videos without any charge of any kind. We understand that some websites may offer paid services, provided that the website that hosts these videos provide a free method to allow viewers to view them. You may distribute the videos on that website. The gap in this is that it doesn't prevent you from privating them. Where the Minecraft one says after 24 hours the video must be made public, you can make this public and then private them. Because the free method is you get a day to view them. And I think that's why they said all streams are made free to view within 24 hours. So you can private it. That's why you'll see like Minecraft Patreons doing, oh, you get 1 day early access to the streams. That's where that shit's coming from, right? So this doesn't prevent people from privating them. So I'm not going to say it's like an oversight, but I think it's just the landscape. Maybe the people that wrote this up aren't aware of what people are doing. So anyway, let's go to the final one, and this is going to be the nail in the coffin for a lot of content creators. You may not include in your video that leverages our content. You may not include in any video nor anywhere linked near or on the same web page as the video any content that is prohibited as user content under the EULA, and the following: anything that could imply that the video is produced by us or that we endorse you or your video, unless you have an endorsement relationship with us as covered by a separate written or other agreement. which is fine. Like that's the Warframe content creators themselves. Any information related to cheats, hacks, exploits, bugs, or third-party programs, including links to any of the foregoing, nor uses of our content that breach applicable law or are derogatory to us, that, in our discretion, may damage the value, goodwill, or reputation of us, our affiliates, our products, content, or brands. This is a little insane. And the final one, any behavior or conduct that violates public morals or ethics. I need this. I actually do need this. If you, I have no problem reading and acknowledging what needs to be done. But I do need to know what I'm being informed of. Like you can't just say, "Oh, public moral or ethics." I need that defined. It can't be amorphous. It can't be whatever you want it to be, because then it basically just gets flipped on its head, and it's just, oh, we get to bully people that we don't like. Like you have to list this out. Like an EULA, public morals and ethics. I need a page of this. Because I guarantee you, I'm not going to agree with everything that comes out of your mouth, or whatever that form is. Like you have to list it. You brought it up, so public morals and ethics. Does that mean free speech counts? Are we waiving that? Because publicly, the U.S. believes in free speech. It would be unethical outside of a private endeavor. So where's the standard at? Is it like, or is this like a town square? Is this, private conversation? Is this a corporate environment? Like, what's the context here? Because morals and ethics change depending on where you're at. So I need to know what this is. Bugs and exploits. Listen, if I can't talk about it, that means you can't have it in your fucking game. Okay? If you don't want people to talk about it, there's an easy fix, okay? There's an easy fix. Stop using your expansion updates as the beta test. I'm not going to forget Railjack. Deviri on release, Railjack on release, the Zeramin on release. At every major release that comes out of DE, actually, I will say this, the Deviri was not that bad. But if you don't want people talking about bugs or exploits, they shouldn't be in your fucking game. The fact that you think putting this shit in here means anything. Like, I've never been somebody that's, like, gone out of my way to show bugs or exploits. But if I'm covering, like, a weapon or something like that, or, like, I'm talking about something that is super relevant, I might say, oh, there's a bug here, use and abuse it while it's there. They're obviously going to patch it. But I'm not going to make a video showcasing the bug. But if you don't want people to talk about it, don't have it in the game. And the third-party programs, like a Frame, you need to square that away. There aren't too many advertisers. Like, it is absolutely 100% in your right. Okay? Absolutely 100% your right to say no third-party programs. But you gotta understand, Warframe content creation as a whole does not have too many advertisers that will jump into this pool. And if you say no third-party programs, that basically means the two programs, because what's the other one? WF Info? But they don't advertise. Aleka Frame does advertise. So if you say no third-party programs, you're potentially taking money out of one of the few or you're eventually getting rid of one of the few sources of ad revenue that Warframe content creators, in terms of somebody to partner with them, somebody to take out like an ad, You are taking one of the few sources of ad revenue that will dare to venture into the Warframe space. Because Warframe content as a whole is kind of fucking dead. Like, it's not deader than dead. But the fact is there's not a lot of hype around the game. Besides expansions. So what else do we have? Like, exploits, bugs, new programs, and you don't want to specifically allow these. I'm surprised somebody didn't read the room and go, oh, third-party programs. Like, did anybody at DE think about their creators and go, how is the health of our creators doing? Like, is the environment, is the content that is out there content that makes us look good? Or is it nothing but build videos and promotional material? Does our game look boring? Are people having fun? And for some reason, if somebody actually did that, they went, oh, let's make sure the only thing that can be done is educational and promotional material. Why in the hell would you not want people having fun and making videos about it? Like, you would specifically want to put that on the EULA. Oh, like, build videos for like dojos, like how-to guides. Why would you not I don't understand why this stuff that you literally do creators for, fashion frame, what allows people to be creators, why wouldn't those specifically be listed as things that are allowed? So like Twitch streaming, YouTube, fashion framers or whatever the fuck they're called, captura artists. Why wouldn't that shit be specifically fucking listed? At a minimum. And the exploits and bugs, listen, if you don't want people talking about them, don't have them in the game. Okay? Bugs, really? Like, exploits, I can kind of see that if it's something that's like truly unintended, but bugs, if you don't want people talking about them, don't have them in the fucking game. Okay? And also, final thing, second to the last, this thing you keep seeing, this is what I'm supposed to place at the hold on, let me hold on, I think I'm right by it in Minecraft. Okay, here we go. This paragraph is Digital Extremes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 words. And it just needs to be in the description. They don't even want you to put it in the video. Not official Minecraft product, not approved by or associated with Mojang. Billion-dollar company's disclaimer. This is ours. DE, I am not saying you do not have the right to do this, but you gotta get it to fucking together. Put it in the description. This entire EULA is a cover your ass piece of paper. We understand that. Just in the info bar, at the beginning of the video, do you really want this to be the first thing every single person sees when they're watching YouTube? There's no way you can mean that. There's no way you could mean at the beginning of the video. There's no way you could actually mean this if you thought about it. Somebody who is a lawyer who does not interact in the YouTube space who knew what this would look like if everybody followed it would actually want this. Get it together. This is perfectly fine in the video description. Change it a bit so the teacher doesn't know you're fucking copying. No, this is insane. This, you want to talk about make us look bad? You want every single video about Warframe from now until this gets updated to have this at the start of the video. You want every single video. Every single video to have this fucking paragraph at the start of it. For them to be in compliance, you got to get real. Every single video is going to be out of compliance. And then you basically just might as well admit to people, oh, we just want to be able to get rid of you for any reason. Just putting out shit that's so damaging they won't do it, so you can just get rid of them at any time. Get it together. Make it a sentence. Copy Minecraft. Have it go in the description. Completely reasonable. But you want this at the beginning of the video? Jesus Christ. And then to top it all off, oh, we can just take down your content. We may terminate your right to host, distribute, or otherwise make available a video that leverages our content. Just to finish it off, anyway, questions, comments, concerned. Even if you felt like you can say easily, just to self-reflect, maybe I'm coming off a little too harsh on this, but the fact is in my clan and alliance, there are not a lot of people, but there are a couple people that are thinking about making YouTube videos. There's even more that have like dipped their toes into the YouTube sphere and have done like 1 or 2 videos and then have gone like, oh, that's not for me. But when somebody asks me, do you think it's worth going for YouTube content creator? Personally, I don't know what the answer is anymore. Because being a Warframe content creator is clearly like a good thing, right? For Warframe. But I don't know if it's a good thing for the creators themselves. Like when you see the content creator streamers and you ask them like, oh, how's the creator Discord? Like, are they really informative? Are they helpful? They all basically goes, no, not really. I was like, oh, well, with the EULA, like in the creator Discord, like, of course they had to have like broken down the explanation because like you're supposed to be like partners with them, right? Like they would have given you like the more plain spoken EULA breakdown because that's like what they expect. And they obviously wouldn't want any of their creators violating any of those rules because that would look horrible, right? And they were like, no, that's not true either. So maybe it's time Digital Extremes gets rid of and earns a new nickname besides doesn't explain. Because if anybody were to read this EULA and then think about putting their time and effort into the game to try to make like a career out of doing YouTube, and I was a kid, I'd probably pick Minecraft. Because it's like, oh, Warframe can take down your content at their discretion. Depending on public morals, no, we're not going to list them. We can ban you or start punishing you on like a scaled system. If you do anything that disrupts anybody, you can be punished. If you violate any law anywhere on the planet, we can punish you. If you, it's just it feels absurd when you list it out and then go, "Hey, do you want to play Warframe?" And it's like, "Well, bitch, I don't know. Like, I need to know everything." Of course not. Of course not. But that's also what the EULA says. So I don't know. Between this and the Steel Essence farm turn in nerf from Teshin, bro, this is a drag as far as I'm concerned. Like, I don't know. My discussion's over with this. I just wanted to put my own opinion out there, how I saw it, how I broke it down, the highlights. The VPN's a big one, bugs and exploits. Okay, if listen, that's fine, DE. If you don't want people talking about bugs, don't have them in the game. If you don't want them talking about exploits, don't have them in the game. Um, if you don't want people talking about bugs, don't have bugs be the most interesting thing about the game. Okay, how about that? So, it is what it is. My rant's over. If any of you made it this far, um, leave any comment you want down the comment section. I'll be replying to most things on this, but it's just they put out an EULA where if you read through it and then was like potentially a content creator thinking about coming over to Warframe and you were coming from Minecraft, you would look at the end user license agreement of Warframe and immediately go back to Minecraft. Now, obviously, that's a super small portion of the community. But it's just the fact is Warframe needs the bar of adoption to be as low as fucking possible. Okay, you can't ask more out of people than other places when people are already leaving. Like if you're burning bridges with your community, you can't turn around and then start asking them for more. Like you're just gonna purge people faster. I've already been in contact with a couple of people from my alliance. Um, one of the more experienced guys quit Warframe, and he wasn't even mad about it. But he was like, "Yeah, the EULA was the last thing." Where it was like, oh, like Deviri was like starting to grind down, like it wasn't being fun anymore. Like obviously Deviri is interesting, but it sure as fuck not replayable. I'm not gonna do Deviri for hundreds of hours. That is a solid week's worth of work, and then I'm done with it. Obviously the circuit stuff is kind of fun, but like you wouldn't go out of your way to do it on your own. Um, like once everything's farmed up, once you rank 5 all the arcanes, are you really going back to the circuit? Probably not. Um, so either the circuit and that sort of stuff wasn't made for players like me, or it wasn't. It was made for newer players. You know what I mean? But it's just it didn't fit the bill for me. Like it was super nice when it first came out. I enjoyed the hell out of it, but it's not content that I want to do put hundreds of hours into. Like 3 4 months when I get home from work and I want to play Warframe for like 2 3 hours before I like do some chores or something like that. That circuit isn't something I find that kind of enjoyable. Like it's not the right kind of enjoyable for that. And since they nerfed my Steel Essence farm, it's just kind of is what it is. Might be going over to a mirror defense farm though. One of the guys in the clan is got like 15,000 shards or whatever the hell that shit is because he just does that shit all day and he's having a blast. So I don't know, maybe I'll try that and play with him for a bit. But I've lost 2 warlords, 15 players over MR30, 14. My clan of New Bros is fine. But the login, I've noticed my clan has a 90-day login requirement. Um, and after the last time I trimmed and brought in new players to get us back up to 100, I have noticed the last logged on has gone from like 29 days when we were super healthy. A bunch of people logged on for Deviri, as is expected, right? But there are a couple players that very clearly checked out the new update, played it for like a week, and then never fucking touched the game again. They'll be back for the next update. And that's a lot of players in Warframe, where they just want to check out the update and then just stop playing Warframe. They don't want to grind it out. So the idea of making content that makes grinding the stuff out slower is fucking absurd, because it's just going to make it so those seasonal people don't come back, and it's going to piss off your regular people. But I don't know who they're making Warframe for anymore. Because like even the newer players aren't liking it. Like the ones that have gotten to Deviri are kind of fucking tired of it also. And it's only been out for like a month. Or a month or two, or whatever the hell it was. Whenever the hell it came out. But anyway, bitch fest over. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes, I am alright. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Normally I don't share my thoughts like this. About stuff that's not really gameplay. Normally I try to keep it educational and promotional. But this is definitely where my mindset is. I didn't want to bring a lot of this stuff up per se with the Mottcast run. Because a lot of what I'm saying is essentially outside of the new EULA, and I didn't want to cause any issues. Or like, and these were pretty mild takes, except about that disclaimer. That's just fucking stupid. Like, that is actually dumb. Mojang, multi-billion-dollar company, has 11 words, and you're allowed to bury it in the description. But Warframe wants legalese front and center on each video. Knock that shit off. Anyway, take it easy, guys. Later.